everything to do with India-Pakistan problems since 1947 can be traced to that disaster. It was unfortunately, when you look back on the history of India, the single greatest disservice and the single greatest accomplishment of the British was the creation of this perpetual conflict. It really is an awful story in every particular. We had spoken about the whole divide and rule policy of the British, but its tragic culmination meant that the British could divide, but they could no longer rule. And the result was this horrendous crisis, which never seems to show any sign of ending. It's like this wound that will never heal.
On Sky News, a defense expert said that Mountbatten messed up partition big time and that there's so much tension in the region today because of that. Do you think the rushed exit made things worse?
Everything. I mean, the rushed exit was part of the problem. It was certainly a significant part of the problem. But the fundamental problem was the fact that the British had created a technique that made it easier for them to rule, namely divide and rule, by creating this very separate consciousness for the Muslim community and encouraging it, fomenting it, financing it, and all of that, enabling it particularly then finally in the last few years, until it got to a point where it became impossible to continue to rule a united India. And then they just scuttled and left. The first Brexit was this disastrous departure of 1947, and it was done in great haste. In fact, the British had actually announced they would depart India by June 1948. The initial sort of cabinet mission plan was somewhat unworkable because it basically envisaged groups of provinces with Muslim majority provinces in one category and Hindu majority provinces in another category and princely states in a third category, and each group would have had the right to secede after 10 years. It would have been a big mess and not at all a workable system. So nobody really liked that. Then came 1947 when Mountbatten arrived to replace Lord Wavell, the last sort of reasonable viceroy. And Mountbatten came in full of self-importance. He'd been the supreme Allied commander in the Second World War. On the 15th of August 1945, he had accepted the surrender of the Japanese forces in Southeast Asia. So he kind of said, I'm going to get this done. And he said, why wait till June 48? The anniversary of my big triumph is a good day, 15th August 1947. And so suddenly, what could have been done by June 1948 got truncated, and he did the whole thing in a matter of months. Now, that's bad enough, his haste. Now, he argues that the haste was necessary because the country was falling apart. Jinnah had declared Direct Action Day, you remember, in 1946 in August, where there were massacres, horrendous massacres in Calcutta. The British called them the Great Calcutta Killings, but which they proved unable to stop. So the feeling was, if the Muslims didn't get their own country, there would be more killing, more butchery, and so on. Ironically, as we all know with hindsight, poor Jinnah was actually dying. And had the original plan of 1948 remained, the most obdurate advocate of partition might not even have been around. A good Lord might have taken him by then. But he was also in a hurry. Mountbatten was in a hurry. The Indian Congress leaders didn't want partition, particularly Mahatma Gandhi was stoutly resistant to it till the very end. But even people like Nehru and Patel, who had felt that India should be kept united, finally were just exhausted by all of this and said, let's give in. Better to rule what remains of the country than to continually suffer this kind of division. And there is a further reason for this. In 1946, an interim government had been formed by Lord Wavell, an interim government to rule India, which included both the Congress and the Muslim League. But the Muslim League used the interim government to demonstrate that they would not cooperate with the Congress. So they absolutely refused to approve any file submitted by a Congress minister to their ministries. The finance minister of the government was Liaquat Ali of the Muslim League. He basically continually blocked the budget. The League's non-cooperation meant that the Congress minister said, how can we run a country with these people? They clearly will not cooperate. And that lesson also convinced the Congress that we may as well give in to the idea of partition.
People both online and offline are confused, Shashi. Does partition continue to shape our politics, our identity, and also our diplomatic relationships today?
Well, yes. I mean, first of all, between the two countries, definitely. Because partition created a schism that will not heal. In a civilization that had been won for thousands of years, suddenly a whole new country was born with hostility and bristling hostility on a daily basis, reinforced by an ideology that claims that Hindus and Muslims can never live together and they're separate nations and so on. Now, there are multiple problems coming from this. First, Pakistan has this notion of the unfinished business of partition. What is the unfinished business for them? It is Kashmir, because Kashmir is a Muslim majority state contiguous with Pakistan, but not in Pakistan. They want it. And they want it, and they're prepared to kill, and they're prepared to commit terrorist acts, and they're prepared to go to war to get it. India says, you're not going to get it. So we've had wars in 1948, in 1965. Yes, in 71, the war was more about Bangladesh. In 1999, over Kargil. And now the most recent 88-day tragedy. And we've had 36 years of terrorist attacks all over this so-called unfinished business. So this has been a very, very major, prolonged legacy from the Pakistani chip on the shoulder point of view. Secondly, India had really never accepted the logic of partition. India did not agree that Hindus and Muslims could not live together. On the contrary, India said to the Muslims of India, those who've chosen to stay on, you're Indians, you have all the rights of every other Indian. So the result was you had on the one hand a bigoted Islamist state on one side, and you had a secular pluralist state on the other. The two ideas are incompatible. Every time a Muslim came to prominence in India, President of India, Chief Justice of India, General of the Army, all of these things, major movie stars, cricket captains, whatever, it was a standing rebuke of the very Pakistani idea. If a Muslim could achieve all this in India, then why did Pakistan need to be created? That too was a constant irritant to them. They wanted to keep attacking this. For them, creating, highlighting, and fomenting Hindu-Muslim division in India was a very important thing, which is why as recently as 2025, you have this bigoted Islamist general who commands the Pakistani army, a man called General Asim Munir, making a speech that could have been made by Jinnah in 1947 saying Hindus and Muslims cannot live together. You know, you keep thinking, my God, if only those 10 years had gone differently, what a different subcontinent we would have had, what a different country we'd be. You know, the kind of sort of world leadership that China is truly enjoying today might have been ours, but we have been held back by decades of hostility, bitterness, unproductive military expenditure, futile wars, terrorism, all because of partition.